So season 2 has been out for almost a full week now, and a lot of people are starting to get the new Descendant Keelan baked and out of the oven. And the question that lingers in the community's mind is Keelan any good? Today, I'm going to get you that answer, show you exactly how he works, and give you his best build. And to help, I created this downloadable Keelan guide. It's got everything from how to unlock him, his key components, and the build you need to assemble. Let's do this.
Wait, did we just become best friends? So nice to meet you. I think you're...
As usual, you can download the guide using the link in the comments section below. So Keelan can be acquired from the new Void Vessel dungeon. And farming Keelan comes in 2 parts. One, you're going to get data vaults at the end of the Void Vessel after you defeat the boss. And then you need his crafting materials, which you're probably going to get enough of by the time you get all of his blueprints. He has 2 transcendent mods. We'll talk about those and where to get them. And of course, we will go through the build. If you need a full guide on how to do the Void Vessel efficiently, I put that out the other day. You should check it out. You can also get your fellow from the Void Vessel, and I also created a guide on that dude, as well as how to level him up. So after you beat the boss in the Void Vessel, you're gonna get these data vaults. Now, what can be confusing is which one to pick for what part. So I've simplified that. So for the Keelan code, you want the intact data vault. That's going to give you a 15% chance, which is as good as it gets. The spiral catalyst, you want the imperfect data vault. Stabilizer, the restricted data vault, and the enhanced cell, the lost data vault. To ensure you have all 4 to choose from, you want to make sure you have 2 minutes on the clock after you defeat the boss. If you need more information on the Void Vessel, please check out the guide. What you want to do is gather the crafting materials from the loot caves throughout the Void Vessel. And you want to stay constant on this because the idea is to have all the materials you need by the time you get all the blueprints. And Keelan's are easy because all of his materials will be located in the broken storage containers. These don't require a key, so that makes it nice and easy for you. Once you have all of this, see Anais and Albion to get him cooked. Keelan is built on speed and toxicity. Think of him as a mashup between Bunny and Freyna, because that's exactly what he is. Each one of his skills plays a vital role, so don't discount any of them. They actually come together to produce results. So before we break down his kit, I just want to do a quick demonstration. That way you kind of can put all of this in context. And what I want you to pay attention to is how I am spamming my onslaught. So notice the stacks and how they constantly refresh and how fast I'm moving. Basically teleporting from one location to the next. It makes it very difficult for the enemies to land any damage on me. Void Corrosion basically shoots the missiles off of his shoulders, something sort of like what Haley has. Enemies that are hit receive acidic erosion. This is his form of damage over time. It's a type of poison. And then you're gonna get a bonus damage if that target already has acidic erosion, which could have come from this same skill or his other skills. So the default target count is 4, and the max target count is 10 total targets, and the damage is at base skill power by 245 modifier, and additional damage if they already have acidic erosion on them is skill power by 122.9. The acidic erosion has a max stacking capability of 5, which is very nice. And the duration lasts for 10 seconds at base, also very nice. And the continuous damage, or the damage over time, is going to be your skill power by 4.5%, which is not a huge modifier there. So the max targets thing is kind of confusing the way that they explain it on paper. So let me show you how that works visually. So as you can see, I have no mods on him. We got 4 targets. Now what we're gonna do is put on 2 range modifiers. And as you can see, we hit all 9 targets. Next, let's talk about Onslaught, which is his piercing dash and his bread and butter. This is the skill that makes him shine. So he dashes forward, dealing damage to pierced targets, grants the knockback effect and explosive damage to enemies at the endpoint of the dash. These enemies that are hit will get acidic erosion on them. And then if the enemy already has acidic erosion, they're gonna get an additional damage bonus. Every enemy that you pierce or you go through, basically decreasing the cooldown. And this is key. And if you use it right, you can outpace Bunny and Freyna and be even 2 rooms ahead of them. But it does require a little bit of skill to master. But once you do, that is when you're gonna realize how strong he is. without any mana requirements. He's going to have a maximum stacks of 5, so 5 dashes. So his move distance is going to be 12 meters, and then the stack cooldown reduction per pierce is 5 seconds, and the max pierces that it'll count will be 3, which is a total of 15 seconds off of that clock. So ideally, you want your cooldown to be as close to 15 seconds as possible. That way, every time you pierce 3 targets, you get one of your dashes back, and then you can keep that cycle going and going and going. So the pierce damage is going to be skill power by 797 modifier at base, and the max expandable range is 250%. So burst damage, skill power by 876, and then that bonus damage we were talking about is 146% by your skill power. So that's if they already have acidic corrosion. Okay, let me show you what this looks like. So we're going to pierce these targets, and we're going to start loading acidic corrosion on them. As you can see, I built 5 stacks on this dude. Okay, now what I'm gonna do is demonstrate the explosive damage. So this damage happens beyond his piercing range. And of each one of these, there's gonna be this massive explosive damage. We're talking AoE with DOT. So I'm not gonna pierce them on purpose. I'm just gonna stop just shy. So yes, this is really powerful because it one-taps most enemies that he comes across. His custom resource is called Acidic Infusion, so it's the purple bar. So skills 1 and 2 build up Acidic Infusion, and skills 3 and 4 consume Acidic Infusion. Okay, the next skill is called Septic Gust. The Acidic Erosion is the same as we've seen before, and then we have Septicemia, which is a new type of status. So the duration is 1 second, and the damage is skill power by 422, and the max expandable range is 250%. This is basically a mini nuke. With this skill, you're going to want to run range, and this is what that looks like. I mean, boom, baby. Let's look at the explosion. So the second explosion was the blood rot explosion. You don't really want to lead with this one. You want it to be a second hit, because you want that blood rot explosion. This is what it looks like if you lead with it. You just get 1. If you lead with something else, let's just say your number 1, your rockets, and then you hit your number 3, you get the second explosion, which is the blood rot. So the interesting thing is that this is all working up to something. Okay, let's look at number 4. So number 4 is the second skill that consumes Acidic Infusion, and it's gonna cost you 50% of your purple bars. It works 2 ways. It's got a damage side, and it's got a utility side. The damage side, I think, is best against very heavy targets like a boss. That's where I use it mostly, because everybody else dies from all his other skills with a 1 tap for the most part. So using Tremor, his number 4, on trash ads is sort of a waste, because this one has the longest cooldown and eats the most acidic infusion. For most of the content that Keelan shines in, it's the utility side of this that is huge, and I'll demonstrate that in a second. But let's look at the damage numbers. So the cooldown is at base at 80 seconds, and then the acidic infusion level cost is half of the purple bar, or 500. You have to be within 6 meters of an enemy to apply damage, and that can't change. You can't affect that. The damage per acidic erosion stack is skill power by 1,700. I don't know what to tell you. That is huge. Now multiply that by 5, and that's its potential. The onslaught stacks increase by 3. This is basically the tool to help you maintain infinite numbers of onslaught, or the dash. Let's build up some corrosion. So within 6 meters, you see the glow, and then you can hit him with that damage. Notice right now it's not glowing because nobody has any acidic corrosion. You have to have at least 1 stack to apply the damage. So let's apply some acidic corrosion. Now it's glowing. Now I can use it. The other thing that can happen is that you can have acidic corrosion, but not enough of the purple bar. I have the corrosion, so it gives me the ability, but I don't have enough purple bar in order to use it. So we have to build that up. So when you build up your onslaught stacks, it glows, even though it's on cooldown. So it won't be ready until the little symbol, the icon on the inside, turns absolute white, like that, and then you can use it again. You need to have acidic corrosion on the enemy, otherwise it's not going to apply to anything, and then you need to have at least half of the purple bar to apply it, and then there's its cooldown on top of that. The damage is cool, but now let's get to the exciting part. So if nobody has acidic decay, like right here, nobody has acidic decay, I have a full purple bar. I can activate it to give myself 3 more dashes of onslaught. So let me use onslaught. Notice I don't have any onslaught dashes. Now I have 3. And that is one of the ways you can maintain infinite amounts of onslaught dashes, which is his best skill, and how you can keep up or even ahead of Bunny and Freyna by managing his number 2 and his number 4. With the proper build, you can do that approximately once every 13 seconds. Finally, let's take a look at his passive. It's called Erosion. If you're out of combat for 10 seconds or more, you're gonna lose that purple bar. By building that up, you're also going to be building up agility. The max stacks of agility is 4. So each stack of agility is going to bring more power and speed. So the skill power modifier increase per stack is at 28%, times 4 on top of everything we just talked about. And then you'll have a movement speed increase per stack of 12.5% times 4. And so even when he's not dashing, he's running at incredibly fast speeds. Okay, let me show you what this looks like. So I'm going to build some stacks by using the skill. See the little symbol on the side? It'll start to build up. The key to a good Keelan build is leaning into his toxic and singular damage and leading with that, followed up by skill cooldown and then a little bit of expansion. And he doesn't need a ton of health, but we're going to give him enough to survive. And we're going to kick it off with focus on toxic. This is going to give a 77% toxic skill power with 6% cooldown. We're choosing this one specifically because it has cooldown, and we're choosing it over power increase, which would give us more damage, but we need a proper balance of our cooldowns. So it's important we choose at least 1 damage with focus on it. And then we're going to finish off our toxic with toxic amplification. This is going to give us 65% more toxic skill power. And then we're going to do singular amplification. This gives a 61% singular skill power modifier. And the star of the power show for him is going to be skill simplification. This is giving us a skill power modifier, a whopping 84.5% at a cost of 25% MP. And he's special because he doesn't use MP, so we don't care about that cost. Okay, next, let's finish off our cooldowns. Starting with the basics, we will put on Nimble Fingers, which is going to give us 25% reduction. And then we're putting on MP Conversion, which is giving us another 36% cooldown at the cost of MP. Again, we don't care about the MP cost. All right, so that's going to cover us on the cooldown. So now let's get in our survivability, our HP. Increased HP, which is a staple for 218%. And then we're going to put on Stim Accelerant, which is going to give us a whopping 234 at the cost of MP. Basically a freebie. Now we want to play in range. So basic skill expansion for 92%. And the other one you want to choose is actually important. So we want amplification control, which is giving us 51% skill effect range and a little bit of shield boost. You don't want to go with maximized range because that's going to cost you skill power and you're going to go over the cap. Remember, the cap is 250% max expandable range. 100% is the base, so you can only add 150% to the build. So this puts us just under the cap. For skill cooldowns, we're at 68%, and this is a very good spot. I tested going higher, and you don't need to. There's a couple of reasons why you want to leave a little bit of a cushion in your cooldowns. For one, Onslaught is going to reduce your cooldowns by 5 seconds when you pierce 3 targets, which is going to happen all the time. The other thing is your inversion reinforcement. This does depend on what you choose, but what I recommend is Arcade Boost. On hitting 5 or more enemies with a skill grants this, which is going to give you a skill cooldown of 15.5% and a range increase modifier of 11%. With that range increase modifier, we will be hitting and then exceeding the cap only by a little bit. With the cooldown, that's going to push us to 83% skill cooldown, and the cap is at 90%. So we'll be just shy of the cap. This plays out very smoothly. For the reactor, I have a handgun equipped and a beam rifle weapon mounted. So the beam rifle I do think is important. So that's for the Volsha, because Keelan is OP. I mean, he is the man when it comes to the Void Vessel. The Volsha is the gun when it comes to breaking the RK barriers or the orb shields that are around the enemies. And he doesn't need to put out a lot of weapon damage. In fact, he's too busy to be shooting, but it doesn't take much from the Volsha to break those shields. So it's worth taking a quick pause to break those shields with the Volsha and then smash them with his onslaught. So that's his primary weapon. I am running a handgun because it's going to boost his speed. When he's holding the beam rifle, his movement speed is at 525. And then I'm running the final masterpiece as his other weapon, his really main weapon when I'm not in the Void Vessel. That's going to move his speed up to 650. Now, I'm not shooting this gun whatsoever. It is just in my hand so that I move faster. He doesn't have time to shoot, not even on bosses or commanders. He can break their invulnerability with his skills. So the only time he shoots is when he's in the Void Vessel. And that's when I use Volsha. It just needs to break the shield. And I just went ahead and put Toxic and Singular for the bottom stats because there's not much else that he needs because he doesn't work off of mana. We've reached his cap for range. You can go cooldown, and I do have that reactor, but he's at a good spot with his cooldowns. So I just defaulted for more damage. When it comes to external components, you got a couple of choices. I think the best one turns out to be Slayer. Unfortunately, I'm kind of tired of running this. I'm sure you are too. So there is an alternate, but this one just makes sense because there's no real cost to this. It's got a skill cost for other Descendants, but because he doesn't run mana, he doesn't have a cost. So it's a free 26% skill power. How can you deny that? Now, Slayer doesn't come with the best core stats. You know, there's some defense and shield, but we're at 10,000 in defense and 13,000 in max HP, and that seems to be good enough. He's got good survivability. Because he's basically teleporting, he's a hard target to hit. There is another option. You can run 2 pieces of the Hunter set, which is going to give you 4% cooldown, and then run 2 pieces of Venom Essence for another 6% toxic skill power. So overall, you're electing to take less damage for 4% skill cooldown, and it's just really hard to justify that. And you end up with about the same defensive stats. Finally, your other option would be to put on a mismatch set just to go for max HP. For Volsha, I went with firearm critical hit damage and crit rate. I got firearm attack and then attribute status effect trigger rate. You could also go more rounds there, but I got a god rolled stat there, so I just went with it. I'll show you my mod settings, but I'm not going to focus on this too much today because, again, he's not really using it to kill anybody. He's just using it to break shields, but I got a pretty good setup here. And then super conductivity charge is a must. This is going to give him a rifle charging speed plus 40. And then I chose electric enhancement just to stay on theme here. And I like the electric post effect, status effect that it applies, the damage over time. And then electric conductor, which is when attacking enemies inflicted with electrocution, you get more firearm attack, and then electric circulation. So upon inflicting electrocution, which is coming from the electric enhancement there, increases electric attack by 89.6% for 5 seconds with a cooldown of 20 seconds. I'm not going to walk through the final masterpiece, but I'll let you take a look at it. This is the loadout. It's mostly built for Glay, who doesn't have crits either. So this should work perfectly with him if I were to actually shoot it, which I don't. And then for the other weapon, I'm just running a Thunder Cage. I'm not going to show the build on that. Now let's talk about his Transcendent mods. So one of them is called Focus on Prey. So this is going to change his Void Corrosion, which is his first skill, the rockets. So it's going to modify it so that it can only fire on a single target instead of multiple targets. With that, it's going to increase in the number of projectiles fired and increases the maximum stack count of acidic erosion. So it's designed for basically heavies or bosses. You can run it on this setup without changing anything. So the default target is 1, the max fire count is 3, and then the damage is at 372 and 228. So if we take that off, we were at 330 and 207. So it does go up there. It increases the acidic erosion to 20 stacks. That is huge. And that's across the board. So even from Onslaught, it gets that acidic erosion buff of 20 stacks. So everywhere that acidic erosion can be applied, it gets that 20 stack buff. But what Focus Prey also does is it goes around and adjusts all the damage. And it's not by a ton, but it's a penalty. So for example, if we're looking at Septic Gust, if you pay attention to the skill effect damage, the main one, at 618, for example. So if we take this off, originally it was at 625. So it's a little bit of decrease in damage in here and there. That's kind of a pain. It's not a lot, so I'm not going to write home about it. And one of the great things about Void Corrosion at default is that you can fire it without targeting anybody and just let it do its thing. And because Keelan is just such a good mobber, man, that's what he does. You want to keep the build peak for that. And Void Corrosion is tuned for mobbing by default. And by putting on Focus on Prey, you're now targeting, and that's going to decrease the potential of Septic Gust, which is going to put on septicemia on targets that already have acidic decay. And since Void Corrosion is only hitting one target, there's going to be a lot of targets that won't get septicemia. You get what I'm saying? So it's great against bosses, and I see the potential there, and it doesn't hurt the build that much to run it, but the combination of all those things make it not super attractive. I think they could do way better than this. The other one is called Mobile Strike, and it sounds good on the surface. Basically, it's going to take away Septic Gust, and what it's going to do instead is give you the ability to have infinite onslaughts for a set amount of time. The cooldown is 47 seconds, which is kind of lengthy, but it's called Adventurer Spirit. This is also going to give you a defense increase amount by 20%, which is hefty. Adventurer's Spirit is only going to last for 3 seconds. I've run this mod, and that's not a long time. You can maybe get in a couple of onslaughts, but they have to be back to back. So there's a cost of this mod on top of losing your Septic Gust, which is a big loss because that thing is powerful. I love it. You're also losing your ability to cut down your cooldowns by piercing targets. And that is one of Keelan's best tricks. The fact that you can pierce 3 targets and get back one of your onslaught dashes at least is amazing. It's absolutely amazing and allows you to basically play infinitely. The idea of Mobile Strike is to turn your number 3 to give you more onslaughts to perhaps potentially have infinite onslaughts. It does the opposite. You'll find yourself in onslaught cooldown more than ever by running the Mobile Strike. So you're down 2 skills. Ultimately, you're down all your skills because you need Onslaught in order to build up Acidic Infusion, his purple bar. So you'll just end up with his number 1, Void Corrosion, which is his weakest skill. And you're trying to use it to build up your Acidic Infusion, his custom resource, and it does a piss poor job of doing that. So you end up skillless by running Mobile Strike because of its penalties. It's a horrible module. So Mobile Strike you can get from a couple of places. I got mine, I think, from Frostwalker, but you can also get it from Steroland on hard by fighting the Forgotten. And then Focus on Prey you can get by fighting the Executioner or Gluttony. Executioner is an easy way to get it. And then otherwise you can get it from the Magister's Lab. And it is still worth getting both of these mods. I'm sure the developers are going to modify these probably sooner than later. Okay, now my final thoughts on Keelan. Is he good? Is he bad? What do I think? I think he's absolutely amazing. This Descendant is perfectly tuned. I wouldn't really change much about him. Now, there is one thing. His ability to turn. So sometimes you'll go off of the map or off of a cliff, which can be annoying, and he can't go in reverse. So I would love to see him be able to dash in reverse, but they are adding a new turn mechanic because of the feedback on Keelan, and it's going to be applied to more than just Keelan. It's going to be applied to other characters too, like Bunny, so that they can turn faster. That's the one thing that I would like to see with Keelan. So that's the good. The bad, well, we talked about the mods. His Transcendent mods suck. They really do. They're extremely disappointing. The other feedback I gotta give on him is that as he sits right now, he doesn't open up build diversity for his kit. I think it's very one-dimensional because once you understand his kit, then these pieces end up being the best in slots. So there are a few minor tweaks, but overall, you're ending up with the same build. And I think that's where the Transcendent mods need to step up and where they have failed. So without the Transcendent mods and without really good external components, we have a one-trick pony. But this pony does that trick really well. And when I say he's a blend of Freyna and Bunny, look, I know a lot of people aren't gonna like to hear this, but I was outplaying Bunny and Freyna. So I was looking for that fight. So I went into the 400% infiltrations, trying to pair up with as many bunnies and Freynas as possible to see if I could outplay them, clear rooms, and be in the next room before they are. So outrun Bunny and out AoE Freyna. And yes, it is very possible. It doesn't make them bad. It doesn't even make him better. But let's just say he competes, and he competes very well. But if you're asking, I do think he's better. Except he's not much of a bosser. But that's not how I define better. So what makes Freyna really good is that she's an AFK player. Shoot your toxic skills and, you know, go read a book. But by definition, that makes her OP, doesn't it? And she also makes boss fights really easy because her ultimate is so powerful. So in the bossing department against Colossus, Freyna is definitely more versatile there. And because of that, she outclasses Keelan. But Keelan's not designed to be an all-in-one. He's a striker, so he's fast and he hits hard. And he uses the damage over time in extremely high bursts. So I'll try to put this up on the screen, but I timed his time to kill against Freyna in the lab. With her, I built up decimator stacks, and he still has a faster time to kill than she does. And that plays out in the 400% infiltrations. What I'm talking about is her time to cast her skill, and then the sizzle, and then that awkward pause before the enemy basically explodes in green clouds. And I wasn't using Contagion, which makes Freyna weaker. So without Contagion, she's stronger, so those enemies should be dying faster. But he can kill the whole row of enemies before Freyna's damage pops their heads off. So how that plays out in 400% dungeons is if you happen to be in the same room, but remember, he's so fast, he will clear that room and move on to the next one before Freyna can even get into that room. And that's his advantage. So he's got the speed of Bunny and the time to kill of Bunny, but technically faster than Freyna. And because he's got this explosive damage, remember, it's AoE also. So it's not just piercing enemies. At the end of the pierce, an explosion of his skill happens and kills everybody around him. And it's instant. And Freyna has that shoot, sizzle, and then they die. And in that time, even if they're covered in Freyna's poison, Keelan can come through and kill them before her poison does. And that's got to be pissing off Freyna because she's throwing out her skills thinking she's going to kill them. And here comes Keelan and he strikes them hard and fast before their heads pop off. But outside of dungeons, in open areas, Freyna's got Keelan because she can cast a very wide net. And although he does have AoE, it's more confined. So that's great news, because we don't always want a Descendant trumping another Descendant, like what Freyna did to Bunny. You want everybody to shine in their own way, and I think they do now. I'm impressed. And so is Keelan OP? No, but he is the answer to Freyna and Bunny. You can have all three of them in the same dungeon, and you feel like you are doing your part. But this guy can play, and right now, he's my favorite Descendant in the game. Thank you for hanging out with me. My name is Tuxedo Bandido. That's Tito Bandido.
One and only.
And this was another episode of The First Descendant. If you found this video helpful, subscribe, like, and turn on notifications to ensure you don't miss out on the fantastic experiences waiting for you in The First Descendant. And if you like videos like this, check out the one I have recommended for you right here. If you have anything you want to see covered, be sure to let me know in the comments below. And thank you to all the channel members and donors who make everything possible. Tux Nation wouldn't be without you.
When you buy or download anything for The First Descendant, be sure to use Tux's creator code to support the channel. Easy peasy.
Follow me.